And we are back. Welcome to another episode of the Stupid Fans Club podcast. I am your host, Shaan Donn, and welcome to the club. It was an incredible weekend of sports. Great NFL games, a lot of surprises there. Another fun weekend of college football. A scare for my Georgia Bulldogs. Um, and it started out with a very fun baseball game that I was treated to. I guess I just have really great friends. I keep getting treated to these games, but I had a friend of mine take me and another friend of mine to a baseball game, Braves versus Dodgers, and it was an experience that I will never forget. So I had no idea about the Delta Sky Club kind of experience at these games, um, and it was one of a kind. I During the game, he told me like he kind of doesn't really care to go to the games unless it's this way, and I completely saw what he was talking about. I mean, from behind the plate seats, I've never been so close before to the lounge area in the back where you can just mix and mingle all you can eat food, every snack you could think of, every drink you could think of. It was just an amazing experience. And mind you, the food was chef's kiss. It wasn't your typical like buffet food. It was like clearly a chef was back there. They were making their own sauces. Like it was an incredible experience all the way around. And so I immediately looked into how to do more of that. I'm sure it's a pretty penny to do so, but sometimes it's worth it, you know, especially when it comes with all of that. Mind you, it was a typical weather day. It's so unpredictable here in Atlanta, but it was raining on and off. The weather app had no signs of rain all day, but it was raining on and off, and it was super convenient. We didn't have to like squeeze together with everybody else in the stands and whatever and try to withstand the storm. We just kind of went back into the back and had the TVs with the games going on, grabbed some more food, and it was a heck of an experience. And on top of that, the Braves won. Braves handled the Dodgers that game, and I think they the very next night they did again, even worse. It was like 10-1, 10-0, something like that. And then the Dodgers, 4 game series, so the Dodgers returned the favor in the final 2 games. But it's kind of been the story of the Braves this year. They look explosive. They show glimpses of being dominant, and then they just all of a sudden look incapable of hitting a baseball. But 10 of 10 experience, 20 of 10 experience, really. I can't wait to do that again. I'm going to try to do it with the Hawks too. I don't know. I think they have some sort of experience like that with the Falcons as well. So that was fun, and it kicked off a great weekend of sports. Um, let's start. I mean, where else is there to start other than those dirty birds? Oh my goodness. Falcons, Eagles, Monday Night Football. Now listen, as a Falcons fan, the Falcons fans already know this, but as a Falcons fan, for those who aren't, we are scarred with anything primetime. Like, we were on the biggest primetime stage you could get, and we saw what happened. 28-3 is what happened, right? And just in general, like, we just never win these games. We're always the underdog. We're always like we get the short end of the stick. Like, it just never goes our way. So I don't really get excited about these games. I just, brace for impact at this point. So to give you a glimpse of of the mindset going into Monday night, it was a great game. It was a close game. It was back and forth, especially in that first half. Eagles seemed to pretty much dominate the second half, but man, Bijan Robinson, he is something else, man. He controlled the game. I think he was the player of the game, completely dominant. The Eagles defense had no answer for him whatsoever. He was driving us up and down the field. I mean, he carried the bulk of our possessions. And I think he had 72 yards in the first half. I mean, he was a beast. And who knows where we would have been without him that night. Our offensive line stepped up after a lackluster performance in week one, a TJ Watt domination in that week one game. And they answered the call. Was so happy to see that again. And they spoke to it during the game. Offensive line is really a run offensive line. Like they can protect for the pass, but it's built to make space for Bijan and Algier back there. And they did just that. They completely dominated the Eagles defensive line, and Kirk Cousins had all day to pass. That was a sight to see again after that week one performance. He had all day for most of the time this game, but still seemed a little out of rhythm. And to be honest, the game as a whole seemed to be a game of two teams who only wanted to pass the ball when they absolutely had to. Kirk Cousins just didn't seem like he was in a rhythm. Seemed a little off. Even the big passes that he did complete, it was like he missed somebody else who was wide open for a potential touchdown or even bigger gain. And so it was kind of that. And then the same with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. Like it was kind of the Saquon show at one point, and then Jalen Hurts started to take over. But again, our defense, the Falcons defense, showed up big time. I have a lot of faith in our defense. We are not easily scored on. We were able to hold them. They were getting down the field at times, but it was kind of a bend not break thing. And we did great. And so that second half, again, the Eagles started to pull away. Falcons offense couldn't really get much going, especially in that passing game. And the game, as you all have seen, was essentially over. The Eagles needed one more first down. They decided to throw it, which, again, you can kind of debate or disagree with that, but it was a play that they had success in earlier in the game, and it was open. It was just a pure drop on Saquon's part, which you really can't anticipate. He dropped the football, the clock stopped, and they ended up having to settle for a field goal to go up 6. No timeouts for the Falcons. And kind of jokingly, but kind of fingers crossed, I put in our group chat, Kirk Cousins is getting ready to show you why they brought him here. And he did exactly that. After a whole game of seeming iffy in the past game, immobile, he made every pass you could ask for, and the Falcons got down the field in the speed of light. So much so that when we found Drake London in the corner for that touchdown to go up or to tie it, I was like, man, I love it. And at that point, the goal is just to get in the end zone. Like, I don't care how you do it, how fast you do it, get in the end zone. But I was like, whew, it's still a bit of time on the clock. Eagles had 2 timeouts, I think. And again, the scars of being a Falcons fan, 28-3. Like, we showed anything is possible, right? So all they needed was a field goal to win. So they don't even have to go the length of the field. They just need to get in field goal range. Their kicker has a big leg. Like, let's see if we can stop them. And oh my goodness, the defense steps up again. Pick to seal the deal. And that was just a joyous moment right there. Again, I don't think people really understand the turmoil that Falcons fans go through. We never win these games, and then to win it in that fashion, and you could hear it in the commentary, like they were winding down. It was kind of, oh, the Eagles one more play and they can kneel it out, and it was that type of over. Like it wasn't like they just took a big lead and it's like, oh, this is over, and then we somehow came back. No, it was like, let's wrap these things up. Just, this is a formality. And the Falcons fought all the way to the end and got a huge, huge, huge win on the road on Monday Night Football in front of the world, baby. Rise up. It was such a huge win because I talked about it last week. We lost to the Steelers, which was our probably most even matchup in these first 4 weeks. Because again, we had a tough game coming up with the Eagles on Monday Night Football. That was tough. And towards the end of the game, again, we're thinking the game is over pretty much. They're going to get this first down. They're going to kneel it. Game is over. The Falcons are 0-2. And guess who comes to town next week? The Chiefs. And then after that, guess who just decided to look super explosive for no reason? The Saints, which is your week 4 matchup. So you can see how things could have quickly gotten very bad for the Falcons. Like, you're looking at an 0-4 start at the very least. You get a little bit of like kind of come into the week as a favorite. I think in week 5 when we play the Panthers, week 5 or week 6. But I mean, 0-4, 1-5 start, like that's a tough hole to dig yourself out of. So we really, really needed this win. And for Kirk Cousins to do that, have that game-winning drive in that fashion on the road, he won, I feel like, the locker room over with that, and he definitely won the city over because he wasn't having the greatest of games. Like it was kind of the Bijan Robinson show on offense. He was making some passes here and there, but his lack of mobility when there's any sort of pressure it just looked like, did we make the right decision kind of thing? Like, and for him to do that, I was just so happy for him, happy for Falcons Nation, and gave us something to look forward to and have some momentum going into these next few weeks with these tough games coming up. So great Monday Night Football game in general. Taking myself out of it as a fan. It was a bit of a slow first half, 7-6, maybe 6-6, something like that. But that second half, they got rocking and rolling, and a movie ending to it. So we'll see how the Falcons do going into these next weeks. Got Kansas City on another primetime game. But look, after that performance, I'm behind Kirk, and we'll see what we do. Moving on to just week 2 in general, it was a very strange week in the NFL, and this is why. Let's just read off the scores and the teams of these matchups here. The Raiders defeat the Ravens 26-23. The Saints obliterate the Cowboys 44-19 in Dallas. The Bucks go to Detroit and beat them 20-16. Sam Darnold leads the Vikings to a 23-17 lead over the 49ers. And then the Cardinals just manhandle the Rams in a 41-10 victory there. If you don't know, these teams were on nobody's radar. The Raiders weren't expected to be good. I think Gardner Minshew at quarterback. The Saints were expected to be a middle of the pack team. The Falcons, with their signings and getting a good quarterback in there, were expected to take over the NFC South. Same for the Bucks. And then the Vikings lost their guy, Kirk Cousins, to the Falcons, and it was kind of just Justin Jefferson. You got Sam Darnold, kind of, nobody's really looking for him, checking for him now. And in the Cardinals, it was like, just who knows? They had a good year with Kyler Murray. Some people questioning if he should still be there. And these teams showed up and showed out. Some of them just this week, and some of them in these first 2 weeks. It is the wild, wild west. And I also put this in my group chat. It is like, you don't know who's good and who's not yet. Like, it's going to take a few weeks for this to all unravel. It is so much parity in the league right now. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, even take a look at the Chiefs Bengals game. That's always a good matchup, a good rivalry matchup there. But listen, the Chiefs barely won that game. And the Bengals are 0-2 now. I mean, just a lot of surprises. A lot of down to the wire games where you wouldn't expect it. I mean, 23-17, Vikings win over the 49ers. It's kind of like, where did that come from? The Ravens losing to the Raiders. I mean, they're now 0-2. So a lot of shocks here. And I have to say, the biggest surprises are the Saints, the Bills, and in going in the other direction, the Ravens, 0-2. With the Saints, I mean, the resurgence of Derek Carr is just unbelievable. I mean, just last year, and again, we're only two weeks into the season. We see this happen all the time. Start off hot and fall off. But with the sample size we have right now, Derek Carr is playing like he wants the MVP. The New Orleans Saints look like, and this is not an understatement or overstatement, they look like the Tyreek Hill Kansas City Chiefs. Like, they score at will. You make one mistake, you're gonna pay. Derek Carr is slinging the ball. I can't tell if it's Brett Favre or Derek Carr back there. I mean, Rashid Shaheed, with their as a deep threat, Chris Olave, Kamara, they look explosive and dangerous. And they're not only right now in the first 2 weeks the favorites in the NFC South, as much as I hate to say it. They look like the best team in the league. I mean, they are, and again, they had that first week game against Carolina. And so, myself included, we all just kind of, it's Carolina. Everybody beats Carolina. And then you go into Dallas and put 44 points up on them. Oh, and by the way, limit them to 19 points because the offense is so good. Everybody's forgetting, like, hey, this defense, the Saints are known for having a stiff defense. And their defense looks great too. They are, again, it's early in the season, but they look like dangerous contenders. So much so that they could come out of the NFC. Again, very long season, a lot that can happen. Got to stay healthy. A lot has to go right. But in the first 2 weeks, they're looking like the top 1 or 2 teams in the league. So that was a huge surprise there. And then the Bills. kind of the same thing with the Vikings. Like, lost their weapons, and no more Stephon Diggs. It was seeming like after another playoff loss, seeming like they might have missed their window. And Thursday night game, Miami in Miami, uh, expecting this to be a close matchup, and it was the complete opposite. The Bills went in there and dominated and showed that they are the better team. I think I saw preseason a list that showed that they had the worst receiving core in the league, meaning like who has the best and who has the worst. Not that they're bad, but just like ranking them all. And they were like the least threatening. And they put up 31 points against the Dolphins. And, their defense isn't anything to write home about necessarily, but who knew the Bills would be like this? Von Miller, the resurgence of him. It's everywhere, man. I don't know what's in the water in these first couple of weeks, but now you got to keep your eyes on the Bills. Everyone thought they'd fall off of a cliff, and Kansas City was clearly gonna run away with this, but man, they look just as dangerous. And then the Ravens, kind of on the flip side of things, tough game. They lost by a toe being out of bounds, and it was a 2-point conversion away from winning it in week 1. So kind of throw that one out. But the NFL is living up to its name of being any given Sunday. I mean, the Raiders losing to the Raiders late, it just, you don't expect that. You expect the Ravens, especially with how they looked, how they took Kansas City to the wire. Lamar coming off another MVP season. You just don't expect that. But any given Sunday, is it panic time for the Ravens? No, because you have all the pieces. You've made deep playoff runs. You understand what it takes to win. You have winners on your team, but they definitely have to get their act together. And it doesn't get any easier. They play Dallas this Sunday, so they are going to have to figure it out. Again, kind of that thing of what the Falcons were looking at, like your season can start unraveling really, really early, and you could be playing catch up sooner than you'd like to be. So the Ravens, that they are one of the biggest surprises. Expecting at the very worst 1-1. So I know it's disappointing for them, and got a scary game against Dallas coming up. So we'll see how they fare. Obviously, don't want to go down 0-3, but huge surprise there. And again, a lot of parity in the NFL in week 2, and it's been fun. Some of the other big headlines in the NFL, a lot of them are injury related, unfortunately, but big one is Bryce Young, non-injury related. Bryce Young was benched, and a lot of people are saying that this is the end of that experiment there. They will be starting Andy Dalton in their next game coming up, and looks like he'll be the starter for the foreseeable future. I don't know, man. That was a little shocking to see, but they aren't competitive. They won 2 games last year. Of course, one of them against the Falcons. But they just have no offensive presence at all. They're not a threat to anyone, and it's just kind of a sinking ship there. I've heard some arguments that I mean, you got to put pieces around him. You got to put weapons around him. He was successful in Alabama because he had your Jerry Jeudy's. He had your offensive weapons to where he could get off. I remember, as a Bulldog fan, we played him plenty of times, and it's the known thing. Like, you give that man time, he's gonna pick you apart. And so it's at a higher level, but it's it's not like he's incapable of playing the position. Um, and it doesn't seem like it's a Jamarcus Russell thing or a Johnny Manziel thing where it's like you just don't care, you just want to show up. Like, I'm sure he's putting in the work. I'm sure he wants to win, but it's just not relaying on the field. Um, and so they decided to go in a different direction. I'd like to see him give it a little bit more, but hey, maybe he just needs to take this backup role, see it being done, and maybe he has a resurgence. I mean, look at Derek Carr, Geno Smith. It's plenty of guys out here. Sam Darnold, you know, like, it's plenty of guys who didn't live up to the hype initially, but found a role in the NFL. So best of luck to him. And that was pretty shocking. One of the biggest headlines this week. The biggest will probably be Tua. That was during the Thursday night football game against the Bills. They were down pretty big anyway, and he took a hit. Against, of all people, he took a hit against or a hit from DeMar Hamlin, and it didn't seem like such a big hit. He kind of just tackled. He was trying to lean forward to get extra yardage to get the first down, and I guess hit his head the wrong way, and we saw a repeat of what we saw a couple years ago with Tua and those concussions. You could see him kind of looks like he was maybe trying to get up, and his fingers were. It was just an ugly sight. Immediately knew he was concussed again, and thankfully he was able to get up and walk off on his own power. But obviously, naturally, the next question is his future. What does that look like now? With this being, I want to say, his third concussion. It starts to get dangerous. I'll never forget, and I thought the movie was great. The Will Smith concussion movie. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but in that movie, I just remember a scene where Will Smith, he was playing the doctor, and was like, God didn't make humans to play football. I think they talked about like a woodpecker, and they have this like protection, this layer of protection around their brain. So when they're pecking in a tree or whatever, they have some sort of protection. And they talked about how humans don't have that. Like, that doesn't exist for us. So every time we get hit in the head, it's like your brain is just rattling completely unprotected. And I also heard that, when you get a concussion, it's easier to keep getting them. Like, you may not have to do as much to get your second and your third and your fourth. And I know on the high school level, they will, after a certain amount of concussions, they make you stop the sport. You can't keep playing. And who knows? I know that they had him visiting neurologists. He's been put on the IR with the Dolphins. So who knows what they will say? But it is retirement has to be on the table for his safety. At the end of the day, who cares about the Dolphins' positioning and their playoffs and all that? You got to take care of your health. And, it seems like it's getting into the dangerous levels, and, you keep playing football. It's hard to avoid that, especially at this stage, now that you've had several. again, it's going to be easier and easier to get them. So, I know they have the helmet protection cushions things. Maybe I can see something like that, but it's really hard to see a road back for him as a starting NFL quarterback. It just seems like it would just be too dangerous and in life or death at this point. So, but in the same breath, you don't who doesn't want to see Tua in an NFL uniform again? A lot of people have a lot to say about him. Some people don't think he's that guy, and all of that kind of is irrelevant when we're talking about his health. It's always good to see him out there competing, but within reason. Again, just got to take care of your health, and we'll see how that goes. So Tua out for the foreseeable future, and then overall, it just were a lot of like notable injuries. We got Tua, AJ Brown, Christian McCaffrey, Debo is out, Jordan Love, Isaiah Pacheco, Cooper Kupp, and Justin Jefferson. A lot of big time X Factor players out. Mind you, Cooper Kupp is out. Puka is also out for some weeks. So early in the season, I mean, week 2, it's like they're dropping like flies out here. And again, it's kind of the nature of the sport. But disheartening to see, of course. You always want to see the best players out there, and healthy, able to compete. But again, this is why this is one of the, I probably say, out of the 3 major sports, the hardest championship to win. I mean, the physical beating you take on a week in and week out basis, and then just kind of the luck you have to have all your players healthy or be able to overcome those injuries. That makes it so much more difficult. So hopefully all these players heal up. I don't think anybody on the list, besides obviously potentially Tua, he hasn't been ruled out yet. I don't think anybody has been ruled out for the season, so we should see all these players back this season, and we'll see how it goes. But that was week 2 of the NFL. A lot of surprises, a lot of big games, and we'll see what is to come for week 3. They have a tough act to follow here. Speaking of week 3 of college football was this past weekend, and it was a big one. College football is just so much, so many teams, so many surprises week in and week out. It's so fun though. I love it. The top 25 came out on Sunday, as it does, going into week 4. And the biggest, most notable change, I know, the Bulldogs have lost their number 1 spot. This is obviously coming on the heels of their 1-point win over Kentucky. And who took their spot? No other than Texas, who kind of on the heels of talking about injuries, had their starting quarterback injured as well. So this was a big change here. And I guess right off the bat, to talk about the top 25, you kind of got to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs and Kentucky Wildcats game. That was a wild game, pun intended. No one expected a 1-point anything in that game. Kentucky in week 1 lost 31-6 to South Carolina, who we'll get into as well. But that was a shocker. I mean, Kentucky didn't look like they were going to be on the level or be able to hang with Georgia. But kind of like I said with the NFL, any given Sunday, it's any given Saturday as well, especially in the SEC. Um, these teams are coming out especially whenever number one comes to town. These teams are coming out ready to embarrass you, to knock you off your throne. They get up for these games. I mean, it was a night game on the road for Georgia, and it was just a game where Georgia seemed out of sync. We were getting just the worst time penalties. I mean, it was a big play from Georgia and it get called back, or a big stop for Georgia and then it was a penalty down there. It was just all over the place, and honestly, it looked like a lack of focus. A lot of it. I mean, mishandled snaps. It was just all over the place, and they didn't look like the Georgia Bulldogs, which is why, if you remember back in week one, I predicted that this will likely be the first season where Georgia doesn't go undefeated just due to the difficulty of their schedule. But I also throw in there that when you're looking at the schedule and kind of predicting how the season will go, you have to at least throw one game in there per season, at least one, oftentimes more, where your team doesn't play like your team. It's I can count almost every season. Last year it was against Auburn or even South Carolina. We had a game against Tennessee one year where we just looked out of sorts, and they were hanging with us when we were clearly the more superior team. Georgia's defense did their thing. Still haven't given up a touchdown this season, and it was the offense. It just looked to be a little out of sync. And I go back to week one with Georgia versus Clemson, where again we pulled away in the second half, but that was a 6-6 ball game at the half or something like that. It was very, very close, if not tied. And it seemed like it took Georgia's offense, like it took them a second to get revved up. Like they had to wait for the engine to get revved up. And again, it's a new team, so it seemed like they're still kind of finding that chemistry. And a bit of the same thing here offensively as well. But this time it never really got turned on. We scored the touchdown when needed. But man, oh man, if that's what we are looking like against Kentucky in Kentucky, then oh boy, it's gonna be fun seeing how we look in Bama. Not this weekend, but the week after that, and then Texas later on in the season. I mean, we have got to figure it out for sure. I do think it's one of those things as well where you're number one and you're going into a road game where it's going to be hostile, but they also just they got blown out at home by a team who is not in your stratosphere. So you may be taking it for granted, probably not up for the game. You got Bama coming up after this. So again, I say that because it just seemed like a lot of the stuff that I was seeing was just lack of focus and out of character. So you do have to account for those type of things when you're trying to predict the schedule, and I think this is why we saw it firsthand against Kentucky here. But at the end of the day, we escaped with the win, and but it did cost us the number one seed. And to be honest, I think you have to look at the SEC here, and I think they have a big three at the moment. And I think it's UGA, Texas, and Bama. But not only do I think that there's a big three, the top 25 AP poll does as well. You got Texas at 1, Georgia at 2, Bama at 4, Ole Miss at 5, Tennessee at 6, and Missouri at 7. We make up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 10 teams in the top 10, right? And oh, by the way, speaking of Georgia, we play 5 of 6 of those teams, or I guess 4 because we're one of the 6. But we play most of those teams, and so this is again, it speaks to the difficulty of Georgia's schedule and just the difficulty of the SEC. And if I'm being honest, I thought the AP committee or the poll was very kind to only drop us to 2 because Texas looks as unstoppable as you can get. They haven't really played a true threat yet. Michigan was likely their most threatening game, and they handled that. But they looked good on the road. They looked good against these inferior teams. And then Bama, same thing. They went into Wisconsin this week, and Van Dyke went down for Wisconsin early in that game, and it was pretty much over with after that. They look unstoppable. Again, haven't faced a big threat just yet. They didn't look all that great against USF, but rebounded in a big game this past weekend with Wisconsin. So they look dangerous. Ole Miss looks dangerous. And then Tennessee, my goodness. Again, same thing. Haven't played anybody yet, but I mean, a lot of these teams you could make an argument for being over Georgia, especially after what we saw last week. Now, it's no need to get ahead of ourselves. I'm not saying they should be ahead of Georgia, but I kind of was expecting a 3 or 4 spot for Georgia. I think maybe the poll took consideration that this is an SEC game, and all bets are off on those. But I thought it was very kind and generous of them to only drop us 1 spot. So Georgia now at 2, again with a close game against Kentucky. We talked about Bama, 42-10 win. They're another team that it's just like they have a ton of weapons. Jalen Milroe looks fantastic, and they make you pay when you make a mistake. They make you pay when you make a mistake. They are not fooling around with you, and that's kind of the other thing that concerns me with Georgia. I'm seeing these other teams, they come out and show you kind of immediately, boom, we're here. This is why we're ranked where we're ranked. Georgia, again, this is the second glimpse that I've gotten to where it's like, we got to get revved up here on the offensive side. Our defense is going to stop you, right? But again, I'm going back into Georgia here. But the thing is, you can't do that against good teams, right? Like the teams that you're better than, you're usually going to find a way to hang in there. But with as good as Georgia's defense is, the higher competition you play, like a good defense is maybe against a Kentucky is holding them to 4 field goals, right? But a good defense against Texas might be holding them to 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns or something. Like, and so if your offense isn't giving you much, or it's not gonna be until the second half until they can find their rhythm, then that's a dangerous recipe. Again, we play Texas, we play Alabama, and we play Tennessee. I think I know Texas and Alabama are road games, and I think Tennessee may be as well. These are all top 10 teams, and so again, I don't think it is time to panic for Georgia, but I do think there is some things to fix and definitely room for improvement before these big games come up. Um, so that was that, and then the LSU South Carolina game was incredible. Speaking of surprises, who had South Carolina on their list of being this competitive? I think again, we saw them go into Kentucky and handle them, but it was just SEC beating up on SEC. Like they, who nobody expected much from South Carolina, and nobody expected much from Kentucky. Who cares? But then you do it to LSU, and it's like, okay, what's going on here? Are you guys actually good? They look similar to how I talked about Georgia Tech. They look dangerous. They look like one of those teams where you go in there sleeping on them. You go in there thinking like, oh, it's just South Carolina, and they'll show you up. Um, Very very tough place to play. And LSU had their hands full. South Carolina came out rocking and rolling. They went up 17-0 in that game. And I think what really turned that one around was their quarterback getting hurt. I mean, he was running, he was throwing, he was doing it all for them. I think he had just had some big 75-yard touchdown that had the crowd rocking out there. And then maybe the next drive, Sellers, name of the quarterback, he got hurt, and he wasn't out for the game, but he was very limited. You could see LSU's defense adjust because I think they were still running these option plays, and they knew he couldn't run, so they were no longer threatened by him. And their backup came in for him, and he was okay. But they just couldn't find as much fluidity to their offense as they had prior to, and I think that allowed LSU to get back in it. And they chipped away and came away with the win at the end. But that was a heck of a game. It was back and forth. Big win for LSU after a tough loss to USC. And we'll see if they're in the thick of things. I think they're still ranked at 16, but we'll see if they're in the thick of things in the end. And Florida State. What's wrong with Florida State? They lost again to Memphis. They lost 20-12. And everybody's kind of just scratching their heads and maybe shrugging their shoulders at this point. Obviously, the season is over for trying to compete for a college football playoff spot. But they are just not a good football team this year. And it's strange. It seems like they have the weapons, on paper, DJU, Roydell Williams. It seems like they would be a lot more impactful, especially on the offensive side. But, we are now at the point of talking about should they bench DJU? They don't have any fluidity to their offense. They have a hard time scoring, and honestly, they have a hard time stopping people score, no matter who it is. And so Memphis is a good football team, but in no world should they be stopping into Florida State and beating them like that. And again, kind of same story. They looked like the better team. And so, that's that. And it's just shocking, again, Georgia Tech is a competitive team this year. So I look at that game, and it was a tough loss for Florida State, and it was an upset, but it didn't it didn't give me any signs of this. Like I didn't look. There wasn't anything in that game that made me say like, all right, yeah, this will be a team that will just won't be able to compete at all. Like I thought maybe an early loss, tough game, underestimating Georgia Tech, but I mean now it just they'd be grateful to win against anyone. And they don't have that easy of a schedule either. But easy is kind of relative speaking to them, because they just need any kind of win. So very shocked with FSU. Obviously they'll be out of it here, but let's see if they can bounce back, find a rhythm, and make a bowl game, and maybe have some momentum going into next season. And the big game, like I say every week, Colorado, Colorado versus Colorado State. I'm going to play a clip of the talk between, really on the Colorado State side. I was very shocked to see this pregame. And so I'll play that clip and we'll talk about it.
Came out with that attitude as they were on top of the world, and this ain't no Cinderella story, so we coming for revenge.
Yeah, they came out with that attitude and thought it was going to be a cakewalk. They saw the reports, 27.5 points or whatever it was, and they got a rude awakening real quick. And I think it goes to show that the hype, the media train, all that, it only gets you so far. At the end of the day, you have to line up 11 guys against our 11 guys, and we'll find out who wants it more, and we'll see how far Instagram followers gets them.
We all came here to play football, so at the end of the day, the millions of followers and fans that they then produced and got, and celebrities that then jumped on their side because of who Deion Sanders is, at the end of the day, Deion Sanders ain't playing.
So Colorado State had this clip go out. I think during the game, Colorado State's quarterback tried to do the too little gesture to Travis Hunter, of all people. And they had some resentment from last year, and a game they lost. And this was just very interesting to me. Like, they obviously seem to be taking it personal. They don't seem to like Colorado or what they stand for at all. And they were kind of talking like they were the big dogs in town. Like, they were talking like they were just this team that Colorado was going to have to deal with, and just, oh goodness gracious, not Colorado State. Anybody but Colorado State. Like, I was just surprised in their audacity, their I guess confidence. But needless to say, that it didn't. And they criticized them for the Instagram stuff and followers and all of that, and they go and put that clip out. Like, that was strange, but they got beat down. This game was not close. Colorado, I don't know if it's kind of that thing of like, hey, Nebraska can do that to us, but you can't talk to me like that. It was kind of like that, like kind of a little brother thing. Like, these other teams might give us the beat down, but you all cannot talk to us like that. And 28-9, I mean, there wasn't much to it. Colorado looked like the better team. Colorado State looked like Colorado State. Last year was the surprise. But it's kind of what people expected last year. But I felt like that was a big response for Colorado. after a much needed win after their big loss in Nebraska. Um, and that was a statement right there. That was a statement game for them. Obviously, the clip came out with Shador not shaking Colorado State quarterback's hand because of the clip I just played you. So that was very, very interesting, but happy for Colorado. And this leads me to Deion Sanders and what's next for him. It's so funny because you, it's like the moment he got there, it seemed like the talk started of how long will he be in Colorado? Is he going to Alabama? What's next for? And it's like, man, and he's doubled and tripled down on, hey, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I'm in Colorado, I'm in Boulder. I love it here. My family's here. This is it. But Deion is a big personality. He attracts a lot of attention, and it was kind of the argument of when LeBron was back in Cleveland. When LeBron was black, when LeBron was back in Cleveland, and people were like, "Oh man, imagine him in a big market." But I think it's the same argument being made with Deion, and I've usually shoot it away. But it started to kind of put itself together when I looked at, okay, this is Shador Sanders last year. This is Travis Hunter's last year. Not sure where things are with Shiloh, but Shador has never been coached by anyone but his father, and obviously that'll change on the highest level in the NFL. He'll go wherever, but it makes you wonder, like, is Deion too big for Colorado? And with his son getting ready to exit, with his obviously next best player getting ready to exit, who can they really get to want to come to Boulder? Who, like, just the path after this seems uncertain, even though he's been saying that he will remain in Boulder. I see why there's questions around it. And so, we'll see. I don't know what positions would be open that he'd be willing to take. Does he continue coaching? Does he just want to, retire after this and not coach his son anymore? So it'll be interesting to see. I think a big thing will depend on how this season ends, like how well they do, and who they can recruit, who they can attract there. But I can see him going to a bigger market, being able to get better players, just because of his name and the attention, and the main attraction that he is just as a coach. So that'll be interesting to see, but something I wanted to note and kind of discuss with Deion in Colorado. And we'll see. They're 2-1. Similar start to last year. Big early wins, but again, that schedule doesn't get any easier. So we'll see how they do. Best of luck to the Buffs. And then the other big one was kind of Florida choosing to start Graham Mertz over DJ Lagway, who put up incredible numbers in his last start. And it seemed to bite them. I think when you have, and DJ Lagway didn't play great, but when you just have this uncertainty with the quarterbacks, it's just, hey, you start this week, and it just doesn't create for a good recipe. Texas A&M blew Florida out. It was 33-20, and it wasn't as close as it even sounds. I think they need to get their quarterback room situated. Like, whoever is the starter is the starter. It seemingly should be DJ Lagway. It was a shock to everyone that he wasn't starting against Texas A&M, and that seemed to hurt them. Who knows if they actually win it or not with him starting, but you got to put the guy out there who gives you the best chance to win. And it just seems like night and day between those two quarterbacks when they're playing. And I just hate when coaches or organizations, programs, not programs. I hate when they overcomplicate it. Like, whoever puts the best production out there, play him. Give yourself a chance to win. And again, it's just not helping Billy Napier at all on trying to save his job. So Florida loses another one. Mind you, I believe they have the toughest schedule in the country, and yeah, they look irrelevant. So that's that. And then the other quick hits was Missouri. Top 10 team had a very close game against Boston College. They snuck away with a win 27-21, and Boston College needs to be on people's radars now. They beat Florida State, and again, it was kind of the wake-up call of like, oh, Florida State may not be that good, but maybe it's Boston College may be that good. And two things can be true. I think Boston College is pretty good, and Florida State just isn't. But that was huge. They almost had another big upset to an SEC team there, and that was kind of putting Boston College on the map. Bill O'Brien's doing a great job out there. So a team to keep an eye on in the ACC. And then Michigan, they benched their starter, Davis Warren. They benched him against Arkansas State after throwing 3 interceptions. Another team who, and it was clear as day when they played Texas, they don't have a quarterback. That's going to be their kryptonite this season. I feel like, and their starter doesn't seem like, I think their starter brings things to the table that the backup Alex Orji doesn't bring, and then vice versa. But you would say they have to figure it out, but I just don't think they have it. Like, they just have to work with what they have. Maybe try starting Alex Orji at this point, but that quarterback room is a bit scarce there. But decent defense. If you can just get a rhythm with one of those guys and kind of have them game manage, you'll be in some games. So we'll see. That was week 3 of college football. And to wrap up, we had Berlanga versus Canelo. I love how they chant his name. That was a good fight. I think Berlanga surprised me. I think he surprised a lot of people. He did get knocked down early, but didn't seem to be hurt by it, and didn't seem to really get hurt at all throughout the rest of the fight. And he tried exchanging. He tried, his game plan was to, right after Canelo throws, I'm gonna throw. I'm gonna try to show you that I'm here. Obviously he has big power, but didn't seem to affect Canelo at all. But I was certainly surprised that he went the distance. I didn't know if he even had the conditioning for that. And I thought he might have gotten hurt, and again, he did get dropped, but was able to bounce back from it. And he fought a pretty good fight. But Canelo he's just that guy. He's too dominant. It's gonna take a special fighter to beat him. Starting with Berlanga, I know there's been talk back and forth with him and Caleb Plant. There seems to be, you never know with boxing, man. They'll be getting ready to come to blows in the streets, and then right after the fight, it's just my brother, I love you so much. It's just so you never know, but it seems like Caleb Plant and Berlanga truly don't like each other. And Caleb Plant wants to fight him. We obviously know he's not scared to fight anybody. And Berlanga, they've talked back and forth about a potential fight there as well. So that could be an interesting fight. But after seeing his performance against Canelo, I don't know if Caleb should take that fight. There's no doubt in my mind that he would take it if the numbers make sense and all of that. But shots that Canelo can take, most fighters can't. Like I've seen certain clips where Canelo kind of got hurt earlier in his career. And when I say clips, I saw a singular clip and maybe two where it's like somebody kind of might have dropped him, but it didn't count or something. So I don't know. It's hard to hurt a guy like Canelo. But Caleb, he had a fight this past week. He was on that card and he had to come down. It wasn't called a knockdown, but on replay it looked like he got hit and his legs weren't under him after it. I think he got dropped in that fight and ultimately came back to get the stoppage. But I'd be concerned about Berlanga because, again, his power didn't impact Canelo, but Canelo stopped Caleb. And I think Berlanga's power could be a big issue for Caleb. And so I after seeing that performance, I would have maybe leaned towards Caleb before, but I think Berlanga might be very dangerous for Caleb. I'd also love to see Berlanga and Munguia. I said it before this fight, and I'm saying it afterwards. I think that would be a heck of a fight. I do think Munguia would take that one. I really liked what I saw from him. He does get caught, but he's a heck of a fighter, and he has great power as well. So I think that would be a super good matchup. And I'd pay my money to see it for sure. So there's possibility Caleb for Berlanga, and then going into Canelo. Canelo versus Crawford. I know that's been one thrown around from Turkey for a while. Again, I just don't see it. I think that's just one of those fantasy fights that sounds good, but and Crawford, I don't want to disrespect him. Bud is Bud. He's one of a kind. But I just think there's a certain point, and then certain fighters too, man. Like Canelo he's just a beast, and so is Bud. But at that weight, man, if he's talking about coming up to 168 to fight Canelo, I think you are playing with fire. I mean, because I just don't know. Bud is super skillful, but I don't know that he has the power, and I don't know what he could do to stop Canelo. I don't see the road to victory for him in that fight. But I don't really like it. I always been a Canelo Benavidez guy, and I know it's a lot of people who don't think Canelo runs right through Benavidez. People, I've heard that a lot too, but I'm definitely more of a Canelo Benavidez matchup. And the interesting one as well is the potential of Canelo and Bivol rematch. I am intrigued by that. I know Canelo would be coming with a different type of motor to avenge that loss. Um, but I don't know if Canelo beats Bivol again because and I say again, like in the second fight, he hasn't beat him at all. But the reason he lost that fight to me was like it was just one punch. Like it's just heavy shots I'm throwing. And Bivol was like, it's gonna bruise me up. I'm gonna have to go through hell, but I'm just gonna sit here and take those shots and then be active to keep you inactive. And Canelo hasn't changed very much from that style. Maybe he would in that fight because he would know that he can't win that way. But going into the fight and just predicting, I I would have Bivol as the favorite again. Now, I don't know if they're saying Canelo is going to fight the winner of Bivol or Beterbiev, but that's the one I've heard about. I don't know if he's just looking to avenge his loss and not mess with Artur, but I think either could be competitive fights and entertaining. I think very high of Artur Beterbiev. I think he is dangerous, and I have him as the favorite against Bivol. But yeah, I don't know if Canelo fights him the same way that he fought him last time. I think you're gonna just get the same result. But again, I said it before, say it again. I'm paying my money for it. I don't care who he fights. So that is that. Another big win for Canelo, but nothing for Berlanga to hang his head about. He had a great showing. And going into the weekend, the previews of the matchups to circle. Continuing in boxing, we obviously have Daniel Dubois and Anthony Joshua this weekend with the heavyweight fight. And he said that he wants to fight the winner of Usyk and Fury. If Usyk is able to win another rematch against Fury in December, but I think it'll be a great fight this weekend. I got AJ as the favorite there, but you never know in these heavyweight fights, man. Two dangerous guys here. And then college football, a bunch of good matchups, big matchups. We got Illinois at Nebraska. I think that's 22 versus 24 in the rankings. A good test here for Nebraska, kind of see how they match up after their big win against Colorado. Their first, I think their first ranked matchup against another ranked opponent. So we'll see. That should be a good one. USC goes into Michigan, and they'll try to keep their streak alive here. That should be another good game. Again, I think the thing that's going to haunt Michigan is just the lack of QB. So I wouldn't be surprised if USC marches in there and wins big. But don't sleep on Michigan's defense. They can put a stop to things there. So that'll be a fun one. And then Utah at Oklahoma State, Big 12 matchup there. That'll be very fun to see. Oklahoma State, very tough place to play. And Utah, I got as the best team right now in that conference. So we'll see how they match up in their big road test. And then my favorite one of all will be Tennessee at Oklahoma. I am very curious to see Tennessee. One, because my Bulldogs play them this year and I need to scout. And I want to see Nico Imalalamalave. Don't know how to say his last name. I want to see him. They're calling him the truth and the next best thing. So let's see. You got a big matchup. It's a road matchup. Let's see how good they are. This will be our first real look at them against a threatening opponent. So that's my favorite one. I will be in front of my TV for that one. And then NFL, Philly and New Orleans. Philly is gonna obviously want to bounce back. And we talked at length about New Orleans. They are a team you don't want to mess with right now. So we'll see if they stay hot or if Philly can cool them off like they couldn't do to my. Come on, baby. um, and who else we got? Ravens at Dallas. That is a big one for both teams. Ravens, you don't want to go 0-3. Can't go 0-3. And then Dallas just got embarrassed at home. And so they're obviously looking to rebound here. So that's going to be a deep game there. Ravens trying to get back on track. Dallas, trying to get back in the win column, and get their pick their defense's pride back up. That was a humbling game for them. A defense that everyone expected to be good this year, and who is good, but maybe it's just New Orleans is that good. And then finally, KC at Atlanta, again another primetime game for my Falcons. We're going up against Patty Mahomes in the Taylor Swift Chiefs. So that will be a fun one. Sunday night. Another primetime game. I'm ready to get out the spotlight until playoff time. But we'll see. Big Kirk Cousins is coming. They call him, he's Kirko Chains this week. He's Kirko Chains with the chains and all. But we'll see how we match up. The Falcons, again, I've been a lifelong fan. I know that we will typically compete with these contenders, and it's usually close games, and then it's the backup quarterback teams that get us. It's the Carolina Panthers game is the one to really circle. That's the one where it's Andy Dalton just lights the Falcon. It's like, what? But we'll be neck and neck with Mahomes. So we'll see how that plays out. But it was a very exciting week. This week, again, week 3 of college football was great. Week 2 of the NFL was great, and they both. So week 3 and week 4 will have big shoes to fill, and then another good boxing matchup on the heavyweight side of things. That is all I got for you, folks. Go Falcons, go Braves. Let's bring it home. Let's get that playoff berth. Basketball right around the corner. We are almost a month out. So we shall see here soon. We'll have another sport to add to the docket. That's going to be a ton of fun. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe to me on YouTube, or if you're just listening, subscribe on the platform of your choice. And we are going to keep them coming, folks. This has been fun as always. And I will see you again next week.